Okay. Before we start the workshop, in order to avoid any disturbances during the presentation session, please set your audio to mute. Any question on technical issues or others can be sent via chat box. Thank you. Okay. Honorable speakers, distinguished guests and participants, good afternoon and good morning to our colleagues in Germany. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to a workshop series on sustainable production system and life cycle assessment. My name is Anindita. I'm a researcher at National Research and Innovation Agency, or BRIN, and I will be your host for today's webinar. Last week, we discussed about the importance of measuring sustainability to support the circular economy for electronics, e-waste, and polymer material. And today we will continue discussion, but emphasizing on establishing Indonesia's national lifecycle inventory database. And to officially start our webinar, I would like to invite Dr. Mego Pinandito, Master Engineering, Acting Deputy 6 on Research and Innovation Utilization of BRIN, to give the opening remark. Dr. Mego Pinandito, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for the moderators, Ibu Anindita, honorable speakers, ladies and gentlemen, especially Bapak Sigit Reliantoro, M.Sc, and Acting Director General of Pollution and Environmental Degradation Control, the Minister of Environment and Forestry, Republic of Indonesia, Dr. Nugroho Sasongko, from the National Research and Innovation Agency, deal with the LCA also, and Dr. Hendro Subagyo, the Director of the Center for Data Information National Research Innovation Agency of the Republic of Indonesia, and of course, Dr.Ing, Andreas Ciroth, the CEO of the GreenDelta and founder of the OPENLCA, the open source platform of the software of the Sustainable Assessment and Worldwide Database. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, and also the research group of the Sustainable Production System and Lifecycle Assessment, LCA, in the BRIN, in coordinating with this workshop and also bring this opportunity. First of all, I'd like to deliver our thanks and again to have a very excellent opportunity to meet all of you and also deliver the opening speech. As we know that during the climate change international conference in Glasgow this year is still in the progress, is Bapak Joko Widodo, our president, highlighted that the climate change is the major threat to the global prosperity and development. And of course, about this probability, the solidarity, the partnership, and also cooperation, global collaboration are the keys. And to accelerate achievement of the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, inclusive growth, and also people-centered, as well as the environmental friendly and sustainable are the main of commitment of the Indonesia as the leadership of now the G20. And of course, we know that there is very closely relationship between the public health and also the environment and the global in nature. It cannot be done alone. For example, we just doing with environment also, or we just put it in focus on the public health, because, for example, environment give special impact to the public health. And the same situation, it is about the environment and also the sustainable development. So the LCA, the life cycle assessment, plays a very important role in the environment. I think research, innovation, and also the technological development are continued, and as well as we know that the fast is going faster and fast to encourage the implementation of the LCA in various sectors, and all are interrelated. The development of the strategy of the implementation of LCA in Indonesia, and there is we need such kind of the strategic support. It is always, we know that, for example, if you look at the implementation of the LCA, we need such kind of database. It means that it requires such kind of the big data center. We need also the human resources, that is including the research and also implemented staffs, and of course with the policy and also regulation, which should be support to the LCA, those even it is already exist, and those that must be developed, create and determined now, of course by the authorities. I think regarding to this one, the research and innovation of the products and also industrial technology today must lead to the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and low carbon development initiatives. That is the global policy that we already in the stream. And also the life cycle inventory as a big data or database in Industrial Revolution 0.40, and it supports the Co2 Data Indonesia in Indonesian, just recently said by the president, is needed as the benchmark for the comprehensive information on the supply chains and also the process technology in all industrial activities from the upstream and also to the downstream. The measurement, the systematic assessment of the environmental, the economic, the social impact, and also standardizations, all factors play the important roles into the invention and innovation in management of the natural resources, products, and also industry throughout the life cycles. I think the circular engineering research in products and industry, as well as the supply chains of the goods and service, support the product optimization, industrial efficiency, and the minimizing of the waste or zero waste policy are very important. So this is also related to the what they call the TKDN, the local component level, regarding into the circular economy are being suppressed and increasing and encouraging the added values and the competitiveness of the national product and industry in the global levels. I think right now, as we know that there is still challenges to have an integrated national database for the LCI or LCA. So it is right now, we know that we are still in scattered, so that we have to look at how the research and development data can be found as effective and efficient way, so that we can have such kind of the big database. I think because of BRIN is now manage all of the activities regarding to research and innovation, it will be very good opportunity to use such kind of what we call the integrated data center by BRIN, since we have two centers operating the data center in Serpong and also in Cipinang. So it will become the hub of research and collaboration by opening it to be open to the society, to be open for the research, open for the LCA. So in kind of this one, we have BRIN's open facility to support the open science or open science public. We have the repository repository Ilmiah Nasional or National Scientific Repository, and also ELSA, the Science Service Electronics for the laboratory and also do the other research. So again, we share a lot of common interests between BRIN and also KLHK or the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, and of course with the GreenDelta on OPENLCA, so that we agreed and happy that it could be a good opportunity in the next step to start the discussion in order to make such kind of the big data or the big data center as the result of the exchange on the research project and idea. I think BRIN will support as kind as possible and sharing all of the resource including the researcher and also the facilities to make it successfully. And again, BRIN be ready to support of the activity. I think that's all. Again, thank you very much, and hopefully this webinar will be very successful and fruitful to all of us, to all of the participants, and finally have such kind of concrete planning to build what we call the open national lifecycle inventory database in the future. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Migo. Now we come into our main session, which is the presentation from our LCI and database experts. But before we start, I would like to inform that questions regarding the presentation can be sent via chat box, and please don't forget to include your name, institution, and to whom are the questions addressed. And as the first presenter, I would like to invite Insinyur Sigit Reliantoro, Master of Science, Acting Director General of Pollution and Environmental Degradation Control of Ministry of Environment and Forestry. Mr. Sigit will present the implementation of life cycle assessment and social return on investment in the company performance rating program. Mr. Sigit Reliantoro, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ibu Moderator, Anindita. I'm sorry, Pak Mr. Andreas, I will give presentation in Indonesian because I want to explain for efficiently. Bapak Ibu sekalian, terima kasih atas keundangannya. Yang terhormat Bapak Dr. Mego Pinandito, Magister Engineering, Deputi 6 BRIN. Yang terhormat Bapak Nugroho Adi Sasongko, Bapak Hendro Subagyo dari BRIN, dan juga Andreas Ciroth dari GreenDelta atau OPENLCA. Kami akan menjelaskan mengenai apa yang sudah dilakukan di proper untuk implementasi LCA. Pertama, barangkali kami akan menyampaikan background-nya. Di 2013, proper, seperti kita ketahui, proper adalah program yang sebetulnya awalnya ditujukan untuk melakukan mendorong perusahaan taat terhadap peraturan lingkungan hidup. Tetapi dalam perjalanannya kita juga melihat bahwa ketaatan terhadap peraturan lingkungan hidup saja sudah tidak memadai, tetapi sudah harus ikut serta dalam mengurangi dampak, mengurangi intensitas dari suatu industri terhadap lingkungan. Oleh sebab itu kita mengadopsi di tahun 2013 konsep utamanya adalah kita menggunakan siklus damming. Jadi apa yang selalu dikerjakan itu harus direncanakan, kemudian dilaksanakan, dilakukan pengecekan, kemudian kita mereview dari yang sudah dijalankan untuk melakukan perbaikan. Kemudian itu semua kita integrasikan di tahun 2013 itu dengan kriteria proper. Ada dua kriteria proper, yaitu kriteria terhadap ketaatan dan kriteria terhadap beyond compliant. Jadi yang sifatnya itu tidak diwajibkan oleh peraturan. Di beyond compliant itu ada sistem manajemen lingkungan, efisiensi energi, penurunan emisi, penurunan beban pencemaran dari air, kemudian 3R, baik limbah P3, non-P3, dan keanekaragaman hayati, serta sebetulnya begitu sudah baik di dalam industri, itu didorong untuk menjadi tetangga yang baik melalui program community development. Nah, ini adalah kriteria proper. Jadi tadi siklus damming itu selalu kita ubah menjadi kriteria yang isinya adalah ada kebijakan yang merupakan komitmen dari pimpinan perusahaan. Kemudian begitu ada kebijakan, maka harus ada siapa yang melaksanakan dan apa yang kompetensi yang diperlukan. Kemudian apa yang dirumuskan dalam kebijakan itu didetailkan dalam perencanaan, kemudian ada tool-tool tersendiri untuk masing-masing aspek komponen. Misalnya untuk efisiensi energi, toolnya adalah audit energi. Untuk community development, kita menggunakan toolnya social mapping. Kemudian untuk air, kita ada audit air dan lain sebagainya. Dan harus dipastikan ada kompetensi dari pelaksana yang harus disertai dengan bukti-bukti pelatihan. Kemudian hasilnya dilaporkan, dan kemudian kita juga mengumpulkan benchmarking dari industri sejenis dalam implementasi siklus Deming tadi. Nah, ini nilai implementasi ini adalah diberikan jika perusahaan berada di posisi yang terbaik, sedang, atau yang rendah. Nah, ini adalah salah satu contoh data-data yang sebetulnya begitu banyak dikumpulkan di dalam proper. Contohnya adalah kita membuat benchmarking untuk industri pembangkit. Jadi semua industri untuk mendapatkan nilai implementasi tadi melakukan benchmarking, mengumpulkan datanya, kemudian ini diolah oleh asosiasi untuk mendapatkan gambaran posisinya dia ada di terbaik atau dia berada di posisi yang istilahnya adalah posisi yang lebih rendah atau performanya kurang bagus. Nah, kita juga memasukkan konsep eko-inovasi yang kita gabungkan dengan konsepnya antara Blue Ocean Strategy dengan eko-inovasi. Jadi, satu inovasi di dalam proper itu harus bisa membuktikan bahwa terjadi penurunan biaya, kemudian ada perbaikan di lingkungannya, atau ada pengurangan beban pencemaran yang kuantitatif. Jadi, ada lagi data terkumpul di sana. Sedangkan value yang harus diangkat itu sifatnya bisa kuantitatif atau kualitatif. Sehingga teman-teman di perusahaan sudah bisa mengumpulkan data-data dan bisa mengklaim kontribusi mereka terhadap perbaikan lingkungan, misalnya efisiensi energi, penurunan emisi, 3R limbah B3, dan kegiatan-kegiatan lainnya. Nah, selain itu, ternyata dari upaya tersebut juga muncul berbagai inovasi, dan ujungnya adalah perusahaan-perusahaan mulai terdorong untuk mengambil paten. Ini adalah salah satu contoh dari paten lingkungan, yang ada 9 paten lingkungan dari LNG Badak yang ini 3 tahun yang lalu. Mungkin mereka sudah bertambah di tahun ini. Nah, dari upaya-upaya tersebut kita juga men-tagging sebetulnya apa sih kontribusi perusahaan terhadap misalnya SDGs nomor 12, nomor 7, atau nomor 10. Kalau dilihat di sini bahwa yang paling besar kontribusi perusahaan itu dari tahun ke tahun adalah memang di tujuan nomor 12, yaitu memastikan pola konsumsi dan produksi yang berkelanjutan. Sedangkan yang agak ketinggalan adalah yang tujuan nomor 10, 16, dan 5, yang memang mungkin ini berkaitan dengan mengurangi ketimpangan di dalam negara, kemudian masyarakat damai dan inklusif, yang mungkin agak susah juga mendefinisikan peran dunia usaha untuk mencapai tujuan 10 dan 16 tadi. Nah, tadi angka-angka itu kita agregat di dalam angka-angka ini. Jadi ini adalah efisiensi energi yang dilaporkan oleh sekitar 500 perusahaan yang sudah memperoleh peringkat hijau. Jadi misalnya tahun 2020 ada 430.000 gigajoule dari efisiensi energi. Ada 131 juta ton yang bisa diturunkan dari emisi gas rumah kaca. Nah, ketika berbicara upaya efisiensi, uang adalah hal yang paling mudah untuk menggerakkan manajemen atau pimpinan di perusahaan, sehingga kita juga membantu teman-teman di perusahaan untuk mengukur sebetulnya berapa sih keuntungan yang diperoleh dari upaya-upaya efisiensi energi tersebut, penurunan emisi, dan lain sebagainya. Ini adalah data-datanya terkumpulkan, dan juga yang paling bawah ini adalah data mengenai berapa sih kontribusi perusahaan terhadap pemberdayaan masyarakat. Di tahun 2020 ada 6,2 triliun yang dikontribusikan terhadap perbaikan melalui pemberdayaan masyarakat. Sementara penghematan dari efisiensi energi sampai penurunan beban pencemaran itu sekitar 107 triliun rupiah. Di sebelah kanan itu adalah jumlah inovasi yang dihasilkan oleh teman-teman di perusahaan. Nah, kemudian kita melihat kalau di level perusahaan saja, di level 1 unit bisnis saja, begitu besar bisa diakumulasikan perbaikan dan efisiensi, penghematan biaya, apa yang akan bisa dilakukan apa yang akan terjadi jika itu bisa didorong di seluruh supply chain-nya. Kebetulan kita ketemu dengan metodologi LCA yang bisa digunakan untuk mendorong perusahaan juga mempengaruhi seluruh supply chain-nya, mulai dari cradle to grave-nya, untuk melakukan perbaikan lingkungan dan mengefisiensikan pemakaian sumber daya alam. Sehingga di dalam Permen LHK nomor 1 tahun 2021 tentang kriteria proper, selain eco-inovasi, juga ada lifecycle assessment dan inovasi sosial. Nah, ini adalah sebetulnya inovasi sosial ini adalah kita menggabungkan, mendorong perusahaan-perusahaan untuk mulai istilahnya bertanggung jawab terhadap tidak hanya masyarakat di ring satunya, tapi juga seluruh supply chain-nya. Jadi ada 4 kriteria di inovasi sosial, barangkali tidak perlu dijelaskan di kesempatan ini. Nah, ini adalah bagaimana sejarah kami proper mengadopsi LCA. Jadi mungkin sejarah ini versinya proper, belum tentu akan sesuai dengan yang dikembangkan oleh Bapak Ibu sekalian yang juga terlibat banyak di dalam pengembangan LCA. Jadi di tahun 2010 masih sangat sedikit riset yang berkaitan dengan LCA. Kemudian di tahun 2015 mulai diadopsi LCA itu oleh Pusat Standarisasi Lingkungan. Kemudian di tahun 2016 ada adopsi ISO 1440 menjadi SNI 14040 2016. Kemudian di tahun 2018 kita mulai melakukan sosialisasi untuk memperkenalkan LCA itu untuk digunakan di dalam proper. Dan di tahun berjalan, mulai tahun 2018, 2019, sampai 2020, kebutuhan untuk meningkatkan kapasitas pelatihan dan juga menyusun LCA menjadi meningkat. Kemudian pada puncaknya, pada tahun 2021, di Permen mengenai proper, itu dicantumkan secara tegas perusahaan harus bisa menunjukkan LCA kalau ingin memperoleh peringkat hijau dan emas. Sebagai tindak lanjut dari permen tersebut, kita juga sudah mengumpulkan pakar-pakar LCA untuk membuat pedoman penyusunan laporan penilaian daur hidup. Jadi ini memang didasarkan atas ISO 14040 dan SNI 14044. Kemudian ini sifatnya memang sederhana, masih banyak yang perlu didetailkan, tetapi bisa memberikan guidance dalam penyusunan LCA untuk versi proper. Ini adalah contoh-contoh yang ada di dalam panduan tersebut. Kemudian ini sebetulnya yang kita harapkan, data-data yang terkumpul, dan ini sebetulnya kalau dilihat mungkin Pak Andreas Ciroth punya konsep yang dari Uni Eropa, mungkin juga dari Jerman dan lain sebagainya. Ini adalah yang dari Korea, dan barangkali ini akan bisa menjadi semacam kolaborasi antara KLHK dengan BRIN untuk bisa mendevelop data manajemen untuk LCA. Karena tadi potensi untuk mengumpulkan data itu sudah sangat besar sekali. Di tahun 2021 itu ada 289 perusahaan yang sudah melakukan LCA. Kemudian kalau kita lihat performanya, yang paling banyak menyusun LCA itu adalah dari perusahaan minyak eksplorasi, minyak dan gas. Kemudian, mohon maaf, distribusi. Jadi ini niaga, Pertamina niaga ini lebih banyak. Kemudian eksplorasi produksi gas Pertamina EP, kemudian dari sawit, dan dari PLTU. Kalau dilihat dari berdasarkan kriteria proper, kualitas dokumennya untuk migas EP, PLTU, dan juga migas distribusi relatif hampir sama. Jadi nilainya relatif tinggi dibanding dengan air kemasan. Kalau boleh dilihat ini di sebelah kanan yang hitam itu adalah ring minimum sampai maksimum nilai dari proper berdasarkan kriteria LCA. Yang di tengah grafik itu adalah distribusi dari jumlah perusahaan yang nilainya misalnya ini lebih dari 40, antara 40 sampai 60, kemudian ada 70 dan lain sebagainya. Ini paling tidak kalau kita menggunakan cutting-nya itu nilai 60, sudah banyak data-data yang bisa dikumpulkan untuk menjadi basis pengembangan LCA. Dan ini adalah salah satu berita yang menggembirakan. Puncak dari LCA itu sebetulnya kan sertifikasi EPD. Jadi ini adalah salah satu perusahaan pupuk Kaltim, pupuk Kalimantan Timur adalah perusahaan pertama yang memperoleh sertifikat EPD di Indonesia dan mungkin juga di Asia Selatan, di Asia, di East Asia. Ini adalah gambaran dan juga mungkin dalam beberapa tahun ke depan kebutuhan dari perusahaan-perusahaan untuk dilayani sertifikasi ini juga akan meningkat. Barangkali itu saja yang bisa saya sampaikan mengenai perkembangan proper dalam menerapkan LCA. Sekali lagi terima kasih kepada BRIN yang telah memberikan kesempatan untuk sharing. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih Pak Sigit. Before we proceed to the next presenter, we would like to take a picture for documentation. So to all participants and speaker, please activate the camera so we can take the pictures. So maybe is there any, siapa yang mau itu, panitia? Ada yang mau mandu?
Malah.
Okay, so I think first screen, second screen, third screen, fourth screen. Is that, apakah panitia udah selesai? Bisakah?
Ya sudah.
Okay, thank you. So next, I would like to invite Mr. Nugroho Sasongko, a researcher at BRIN. He active in developing a TechDia, a software on technology data, inventory and analysis. Mr. Nugroho will present the research and development roadmap of sustainable production system, LCI and LCA. To Mr. Nugroho, the floor is yours.
My voice clear, Mbak Moderator?
Yeah, clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Very good afternoon, distinguished Chairman of our institution, BRIN, Vice Chairman, Pak Dr. Mego Pinandito, Pak Sigit Reliantoro from the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. Terima kasih Pak sudah hadir. Thank you very much. Dr. Hendro from our Pusdatin department, and our honorable speaker from Germany, Dr. Andreas Ciroth. Thank you very much for coming today for our webinar. Hopefully we can have a very active and fruitful discussion in this afternoon. Today I would like to present a short sharing on the research and development roadmap of the sustainable production system and lifecycle inventory and lifecycle assessment. My name is Nugroho Sasongko. I am from the National Research and Innovation Agency, BRIN. As we know that our President Joko Widodo, during the COP26 in Glasgow, he highlight about the climate change is the major threat to global prosperity and development. He also point the solidarity, partnership, and cooperation and global cooperation are the keys to tackle this issue. And also our president also mentioned to accelerate the achievement of the SDGs during the G20 in Italy. He pointed the highlight the note inclusive growth, people-centered, as well as the environmentally friendly and sustainable are the main commitment of Indonesia leadership at the G20. Continue with this our president direction. We also know that it's very important and urgent on the research and innovation of product and industry technology today must lead to the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, and then the Low Carbon Development Initiative. We also know that the Lifecycle Inventory, LCI, as the database, big data in the Industrial Revolution 4.0 that support Satu Data Indonesia, Indonesian One Data, which is needed as a benchmark for the comprehensive information on the supply chains and the process technology in all industrial activities from upstream to the downstream. And within the LCA, it's also know that the measurement, systematic assessment of the environmental, economic, and social impact and the standardization are playing in the important roles in the invention and innovation in the management of natural resources, products, and industries through all the life cycle of the product or industry. The circular engineering also is very important in the product and industry as well as the supply chains of the goods and services, support product optimization, industrial efficiency, and minimize the waste. And the last also the circular economic, before Pamego also mentioned about the local content, and it's also encourage the added value and competitiveness of the national product and industry at the global level. We see that from this chart of the circular economic, we have the supply chains from the upstream to downstream, from the mining and manufacturing, and continuous goes to the part manufacturer, and next to the product manufacturer and service provider, also consumed by the consumer. We have the circular economic here as the maintenance, reuse, redistribute, and remanufacturing and recycle. Why we need the national LCA database? From the reference that we got from the UNEP in 2020, they released the guidelines for the national LCA database, which is the LCA database initiative, is the compilation of the essential background data for the product, processes, or industries for the high importance to the economic and then the environment, which indicate a national-wide product and industries. LCA also set the foundation for the measuring resources, efficiency, environmental impact, and ultimately circularity in our product and economies. Also, the development of our national LCA database could help increase the availability of regionalized data, build the local capacity in LCA, and increase the practical application for the LCA in our country. This is the guidelines and recommendation from UNEP in 2020 regarding the roadmap for national LCA database development. And in these guidelines also give direction on the implementation roadmap and action plan as an approach to establish national LCA database. It's also give some example from around the world how to support the countries to develop the implement the roadmap and action plan, which is the roadmaps are the practical tools to raise and align the support and multi-stakeholder effort required to generate, structure, and disseminate LCA data, which while they're pursuing interoperability with other data sources. And this is the example of the procedure for the dataset submission to an LCA national database. We can see from here that the LCI database is a system intended to organize, store, and retrieve large amount of the digital LCI dataset easily. It also consists of the organized collection of the LCI dataset that completely or partially conform to a common set of the criteria, including the methodology. It's very important. Format, review, and nomenclature. This national database also allow for the interconnection of individual dataset to create the LCI model. The computation results can also be used with the identified lifecycle impact assessment, LCAI, and method for the cycle assessment, LCA. And the databases are managed using the National Database Management System, which store database content, allow the data creation and maintenance, search, and other access. In 2020, Indonesia, the BPPT, now BRIN, Agency for the Assessment and Application of Technology, now becoming the part of the BRIN, Badan Riset and Innovation, National Research and Innovation Agency. We released the Strategi Nasional Kecerdasan Artificial Indonesia 2020 up until 2045, which is in this Stranas also mentioned how to establish the national inventory database for the lifecycle assessment. Also in Bappenas, our Ministry of Development Agency, Planning and Development Agency also stipulate the regulation on the Satu Data Nasional, which is very important for our Indonesian growth to be to the next in the Industrial 5.0. In our institution, to support this regulation and regulation framework and policy, we also do the research and technology management on the information system technology database based on the National Lifecycle Inventory LCA database. We call this application TechDia framework, which include inside of it a data repository for the research and technology development, technology status, technology readiness level, TKT, local content, and technology supply chains. It also include the environmental, social, and economic impact. And we established our national software, which is a beta version in our institution. For example, we have this worldwide market global supply chains for the wood pulp from the Indonesia. This is an example in 2019, which is Indonesia also produce and do the export for the pulp from the pulp industry, more than 3.81 million ton in 2019, and we can model this worldwide supply chains to be the generic supply chains and do the related environmental and social impact to be like this model. And then we do to model this worldwide supply chains in the OpenLCA database from the PISILCA. We got from Andreas Ciroth for this model for the supply chains of the pulp flow from Indonesia, and we try to model this supply chains using this TechDia in our institution. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Mr. Nugroho. And a reminder, any question can be submitted via chat box, and please don't forget to include your name, institutions, and to whom the question are addressed. Kalau Bapak dan Ibu ada pertanyaan, bisa disubmit via chat box. Jangan lupa mencantumkan nama, institusi, dan ditujukan kepada siapa pertanyaannya. And next, as a third presenter, I would like to invite Mr. Hendro Subagyo. Mr. Hendro also a researcher at BRIN and is active in the development and management of the National Scientific Repository. Mr. Hendro will present the lifecycle inventory and assessment research data for Co2 Data Indonesia. Mr. Hendro, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Anilita. Let me share my screen. Sorry. Okay, is it okay, my screen, to all of you?
Yes.
Okay, Honorable Speaker, Mr. Meko Pinandito, Deputy Chairman of Utilization of Research and Innovation, BRIN, and Honorable Speaker, Mr. Sigit, Reliantoro, Acting Director General of Pollution and Environmental Damage Control, Ministry of Environment and Forestry, and also Mr. Nugroho Sasongko, BRIN, and the Honorable Speaker, Mr. Andreas Ciroth, Executive CEO of GreenDelta and also founder of OPENLCA. And I do not forget to mention Dr. Edi Iswanto Doso, our senior in BRIN. Distinguished guests and participants, good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank the committee of webinar to give me an opportunity to speak about the LCI and LCA research data for Co2 Data Indonesia One Data, and its future development. But I'm not. I will not to speak detail about the LCA database because it's has already presented by Mr. Nugroho. So I want to more rough in presentation. Okay. This is my first slide and also my last slide, maybe, because my resume is in this slide. The urgency of LCI and LCA database in Indonesia, because there is no national database for LCA and LCI yet, as explained by Mr. Nugroho, regarding to LCA and LCA lifecycle assessment. Indonesia has no national database, even though the UN, United Nations, recommended development of LCA database. And also Indonesia have adopted the ISO for LCA and also certification of LCA EPD, but there is no database yet. And also the second issue is LCA data is carried out in silos between ministry and agency. We have BRIN and maybe one of another research institution is CIFOR that manages the component of LCA database. And also we have Ministry of Environment and Forestry, also Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Industry and Trade, and also on. And also the private sector, we have several institutions that use LCA as part of their business. But regarding to the research and research data, research for Indonesian Ministry and National Agency, as said by Mr. Mego Pinandito, is managed by and coordinated by BRIN, all of research. So BRIN will be the only one agency in Indonesia that manages research for ministry and national agency. And BRIN will provide human resource, researcher, and also budget, and also program for this research needs by ministry and national agency. And research data is the responsibility of BRIN, including LCA research data. So this is especially in BRIN, my team in Pusdatin will be manage this research data and service this research data for researcher and also BRIN stakeholder. And LCA research data from BRIN is not, at the end, need to be integrated and harmonized with ministry and institutions as input for the national LCA and LCI database. And we call Satu Data Indonesia, and maybe LCA and LCI database part of the Satu Data Indonesia. When we talk about ecosystem research in Indonesia, BRIN will creating the collaboration hub and enabler for multi-local and global stakeholder, and BRIN will open their platform. This is 3 part of platform: human research, that is researcher, infrastructure, and network. This infrastructure including software and hardware, include laboratories and machine in BRIN. And this platform will be open to stakeholder, not only government and academic, but also business player. For example, we jump to this. This is the facilities that opened by BRIN to support open science. For example, this is repository ilmiah nasional, or we call RIN, R-I-N, as mentioned by Mr. Mego. This is National Scientific Repository, and this National Scientific Repository is for preserving and sharing research data. And currently we have 7,000 data sets, including 80,000 files from about 700 research group or research institution. And another example of facilities in BRIN that will be open is ELSA. This is layanan sains in Indonesia, Science Services Electronics. This is the infrastructure to manage laboratories and other research services. We currently have 500 laboratory, including equipments, 50 machines, and also another services. One of the services is Mahameru LIPI high performance computing. This HPC infrastructure as used by students from university, also researcher, not only from BRIN, from LIPI, BPPT, but also from another institution. Okay, this is the simplification of the schema that BRIN will be served for the ministry and national agency. As said by Mr. Mego, that BRIN manages all research programs from government, including from ministry and national agencies. And so BRIN must provide some mechanism to serve the research needs from ministry and agency. This diagram is simplification of the mechanism. First, in order to make policy and regulations, ministry and agency submit research proposal to the BRIN. And then BRIN will consolidate this proposal in event we will call this event as National Consulting Forum for Research and Innovation. We will gather the ministry and agency to discuss and make consolidation of research proposal. And after we finish and agree with the program, we will be conduct in this next year. And then next year, the research activity will be executed by BRIN, especially actually by research center or research group in BRIN. And the result will be provided back to the ministry and agency as input for them to make a regulation or policy. And now, in this slide, this is the BRIN's roles on research data management for LCI and LCA. This is the cyclus of research data actually, but I want to highlight how the research data must be managed in this cyclus. First, in research activity, researcher and research center will produce the research data, and this research data will be managed and preserved, and also will be analyzed the quality of data in repository ilmiah nasional. And this is the dot line. Above of dot line, this is the obligation for BRIN to manage this part of cyclus. Part of research and manage preservation part, and then after the preservation of research data, this data will be must be integrated and harmonized with other data from ministry or agency. And at the end of the process of harmonization, we will have a LCI database that will be part of Satu Data Indonesia or Indonesian One Data. And after that, this data will be shared and reused by other agency, maybe government, but also private sector, also public, community, and so on. And maybe this shared data or reuse data will trigger more research and the cyclus begin. This is my last slide. So for summarize, I will back to my first slide that we need LCA database, and we need one and single one LCA database to serve the need of LCA lifecycle assessment in Indonesia and also lifecycle inventory in Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hendro. And last but not least, I would like to invite our expert from Germany, Mr. Andreas Ciroth, founder and director of GreenDelta, a consulting and software company with focus on sustainability and life cycle analysis. Mr. Andreas will present not only one, but two topics, life cycle inventory analysis and lesson learned how to establish LCI national database in several countries. Without further ado, Mr. Andreas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So let's see that I managed to share my screen. Yes, you see the screen, I guess?
Yes, perfect.
Yes. So thank you very much for inviting me to this interesting workshop. Good afternoon to everybody, good morning maybe to those maybe who attend from Germany, I don't know. Indeed, I have two topics here, and it's quite maybe heavy topics, and I try to convey these in a form that is maybe, yeah, that is useful. For one, a lifecycle inventory analysis, and then, as you said, building a national inventory database. First, maybe GreenDelta, I mentioned this already, and it's not marketing also, I think, but just who we are. A small medium enterprise in Berlin, in Germany, of now 20 people. We are have grown a bit in the recent years and are quite a diverse team of engineers, economists, IT people, architects, and so forth, from many countries, and have these from the start. So I founded the company in 2004, and from the start we have these three maybe areas where we work on. It's for one, on the left bottom, database development distribution, so software development with a bit of focus on open source software and OpenLCA that Nugroho, for example, also mentioned already, is becoming really very popular in the last maybe 4 years or so, and it's now the most widely used LCA software. And of course also sustainability consultancy and research. So we apply then also lifecycle assessment methods and also develop further or try to develop further the approaches. And this is quite an interesting period of time, I think, because we see such an interest in the methodology and in the concepts, so that we have also some responsibility to do this in an appropriate way and to be somehow, to put this to good use. As said, two points. First is, that looks a bit hectic, maybe slide, but first is the lifecycle inventory analysis book that was recently released by Springer. I am editor together with Rickard Arvidsson, professor from Chalmers University in Sweden. And it's a bit a heavy topic, maybe because you all are maybe a bit familiar with life cycle assessment, and there you see the different boxes in this ISO picture, and lifecycle inventory analysis is one of the boxes. And basically this is where you make your LCA models and calculate them and interpret them also to some extent, collect data and so on. So that's quite at the core of what LCA is. We have these chapters, so it's not a very thick book, you could say, so 200 pages. Introduction, principles of lifecycle inventory modeling, development of unit process data sets, how to deal with multifunctionality. A very nice chapter by Jeroen Guinée, Reinhard Hayungs and colleagues from CML, and Rolf Frischnich too. Data quality, lifecycle inventory data and databases. Algorithms, that is a bit maybe exotic or not something for normal LCA users, but it's still interesting to explain how this can be calculated. Inventory indicators in lifecycle assessment. This is reflecting that often you have, or to some extent, you of course have, for one, impact assessment driven elementary flows, so that you say carbon dioxide emissions, for example, but then you have also maybe energy input also, and can also calculate an inventory indicator from that. And then it's interesting to think about the link between this inventory analysis and lifecycle impact assessment, because normally you do nowadays an impact assessment with your LCA, so after you have done the inventory, and therefore it's interesting to think how the inventory needs to look like to best support this connection, so to say. And it's a bit, I could spend a whole maybe morning to discuss this, so therefore I don't do this, but I was I'm trying to present some selected chapters in a bit, and I will only show a bit the more table of content of these chapters and explain this a bit more, and then highlight some points where I thought this may be interesting for you. And I start with this principles of lifecycle inventory modeling. Here the idea is that you have, of course, every LCA can look a bit different and so, but now with, I don't know, like 30 years of experience, you also see that there are some things that always are, that are common in every inventory. And so therefore it's good to share maybe some experience on how these common things can be modeled and dealt with. And this is for one topics, so modeling topics, so decisions that you take as modeler, basically. So how to define the function unit. You see my mouse, maybe how to define the function unit. Then these old question about how to define the share of your product that you're modeling to the overall impact that you see. So this, if you could say, causality, so what is really caused by your product, and then this leads to the discussion of this attributional LCA versus consequential LCA, how to set boundaries in a basically always infinite, undetermined inventory model that always goes, if you don't stop, should capture the entire world, how to model locations, and when can you say if a data set is complete. So this is maybe the fundamental basic topics, and then of course more extended aspects are modeling multifunctionality. So if you have a process that has more than one function, how to deal with this, how to deal with time, and something that's maybe a bit uncommon, how to deal with flows that are to have to some extent maybe a very high impact, but this is not very probable. So for example, if you model a nuclear power plant, then normally nothing happens, but eventually, hopefully not, but eventually an impact or an accident occurs that could then have a high impact. So how to deal with this? Yeah, and then just modeling conventions for example, transport, use phase, and end of life. Yeah, so this is quite a bit like an introduction into how you do inventory modeling. I don't have examples here, but for some other chapters, I have some examples that I thought are especially interesting. Development of unit process data sets. This is, of course, very closely linked to developing a database. And this is following a bit the Shonan guidance principles document from 10 years ago, that you say you first should set a goal and scope for the definition or the specification of this unit process, and then need to collect data and of course mainly flows, and then could match these flows with background data sets and perform a quality evaluation. And here the book uses a bit of different picture, but this is basically the slight update of this older picture that Ong-Tao Wang and me wrote for the Shonan Guidance Principles in 2011, which shows that initially you have raw data that is not linked or brought into the LCA domain, and then that can come from bookkeeping, statistics, measurements, and also estimates and so forth. And you, by mathematical relations and knowledge, you perform these or transfer these into the inputs and outputs, and also connections of flows in the unit process data set. And then this is the smallest modeling unit. And then, of course, you aggregate this to, or potentially you aggregate this to more aggregated data sets that can be either market averages, so that it's a mix across one for the same product across different providers or different producers, or also one supply chain aggregated cradle to gate, for example. Yeah. Then one really favorite topic of me is data quality. So how to assess data quality in lifecycle inventories. And yeah, that's of course very often addressed, but somehow solved or addressed quite differently. So here, this chapter is written a bit from the background of my participation in the UNEP GLAD working group, where we defined really data quality, and I think came also to some new and better, to some extent, understanding of how data quality should be dealt with. And yeah, this is here the core of this chapter, and then come some notes on selected data qualities that you find commonly, like uncertainty, reliability, representativeness, and so on. Here, maybe what I think is quite interesting to note is that in the end, data quality is fitness for purpose. So it's not that you say, and it's a bit different to what normal when you buy Ecoinvent, Gabi, or other commercial database, they always say we have highest data quality. And this is, of course, I mean, the providers make good effort to really provide good data sets, but data quality is really, according to ISO, fitness for purpose. So as a data provider, I cannot tell if my data set is of good data quality. This can only be decided by the user in the end. Yeah, so there are two sides of data quality. One is when creating a data set, and then, yeah, you have as I said or introduced in this unit post data set creation, you set yourself goals for the data set, and then you can say, okay, this is really matching for totally what I had as goal. So it's best data quality. And the second is when a user uses the data set, and this can be slightly different. So for example, time is a very common data quality indicator. So when I say my goal is in the data set creation to have the data set for 2017, then I say, and the data set is representing 2017, then this is really very good conformance, so very good data quality. But if the user says, I need a data set from 2018, then this is not anymore best data quality, but only good data quality, for example. Yeah, so this is really, in the end, it depends on the use case or the use of the data set to, in the end, determine the data quality. Then algorithms, that's of course very exotic somehow for many, but there's only one book that I know, this from Reinhard Hayungs, that really with Sang-Won Soo in 2001 or so, that describes how to calculate inventories. And this is here an extension also based on our experience for implementing, of course, inventories and calculations for these. And so we handle the normal, so the basic things that are also addressed in Reinhard Hayung's book, but then also go into more complicated sophistications. For one, how to deal with waste flows and loops, and then also how to calculate, for example, an upstream tree, where you see then the contributions of impacts along the life cycle, for example. This is, of course, pseudo code, but we have also normal matrix notation for this, so it's hopefully quite useful for the community. Yes, and then comes last chapter I will present here from this book, LCI data and databases, and this tries to describe, basically, of course, what kind of types of databases there are, and then issues in creating an inventory database, and issues in data exchange, which is also quite common, of course, when you deal with a database. And here only one picture. The whole book took really like 5 years or so to finalize for several reasons, and it wasn't. Springer was a bit sometimes because of COVID, and for other reasons that took 2 years alone, I think. But therefore, it's only here 3.5 eco-invent. But here I made a comparison of the structure, or try to make a comparison of the structure of different databases. You see, for one here, the process sectors in the database, and here on the other axis, the countries. And I just took 4 different databases in eco-invent in 2 different versions. So ELCD is the old European reference database. You see it has a few sectors, and mainly it's all energy here, but then some other sectors, so the white points are processes, and the other, so dark area is not covered. And you see that one sector, this is energy, has some data sets for several countries, but the other are really some sparse dots only. eco-invent is more complete, and it gets more complete, even more complete with from 3.2 to 3.5. You see this a bit maybe here for that line, for example. And EORA is one of the input-output databases that try to capture the whole world economy. And there you see then it is really much more dense than the other databases. Yeah, so this shows a bit how the difference in different databases. Okay, now this leads me to my second point, the creation of a national database. And I can maybe make this first a bit shorter, because Nugroho, for example, has already introduced this, the importance. I think a national database is a database that is the national reference, often provided for free and maintained by public institutions. And there really are quite examples already in different regions and countries. Of course, because LCA also started first in Europe, US, and Japan to some extent, this creates an incentive for other regions to also provide data sets and databases, because the economy is different, and processes are different, especially agriculture, of course, but also industrial processes are different. So therefore, this is good to provide. it's a bit an understanding. I think that this is like infrastructure, so that you don't, as a public, you should not pay for this, but this is just provided. And then it's often that you benefit, or it's very beneficial to have an agreed value of electricity grid, for example, emissions, because then this can be used as a benchmark and can also be used in other calculations for referencing. And that can be one important function of such a database. Yeah, which also then fosters national industry in science. And there are some examples, Chile, Brazil, Malaysia, Thailand, Korea, and so on. Some focus only, the Korean database focuses only on CO2 so far. And this is not, we already made for UN 10 years ago or 8 years ago report, and this listed something like 20 different examples, 25 or so. So this is really growing. And we are now in contact with some other new countries that are also thinking about this. And you can make this quite complicated, but I try to give a bit my personal but quite simple view on this. Basically, I think for a national database, you need these elements, 5 elements: technical infrastructure, methodology, use cases, and support for using the database, finances, and a roadmap means a procedure how to develop this. I expand a bit here. Technical infrastructure is, for one, data submission and review pipeline, because you need to or want to get data sets, a data set editor, so that you can share data sets and then people can see these data sets and maybe also modify them. An LCA modeling tool maybe, and definitely a data publication and distribution, so that you have an output and a way to deliver the database. That's not everything, but this is here quite an important part. And I will try to, as indicated also in the announcement, I will try to provide some examples from countries, but only those where we are involved to some extent. So therefore, this is not a full picture, but it's maybe better than speaking in general terms from other countries. First example is USA, where the LCA Commons Gov website is run by the US Department of Agriculture, and then this summarizes all the LCA work in the US that is done by different agencies, so also Department of Transport, National the Energy Laboratory, and so on. So it's altogether maybe, and some universities, so altogether maybe 15 or so institutions. And there we have a very long collaboration with them, or quite long, since I thought, I didn't look it up, but maybe I thought 2015. We developed for them basically all these elements in the infrastructure. So for one, the LCA collaboration server is a data submission and review pipeline. They use this as data submission and review pipeline. Dataset editor is OpenLCA, and modeling tool is also OpenLCA, but of course in the US others also exist, like ZimaPro and Gabi, for example. And also for the distribution and publication, the LCA collaboration server is used, and we really created this first for the US Department of Agriculture. I had this idea, and they said, okay, let's do it, which was very nice for us, of course, but for them it works too, I think. So this lcacommons.gov website is basically an LCA collaboration server that they run. And this, they can download packages of data sets and also individual data sets from this database. Next example is Canada. That is very new. So we just started, I think 3 weeks ago or so. It's a bit also, of course, inspired by the US solution. So they also have the plan to use the collaboration server, but from the dataset editor and modeling tool, it's a bit, they think it's good to use OpenLCA. So because it's open source, which is a very important point, because it can be distributed then for free. But so we are now working on a better import, so that we support better the import from ZimaPro and Gabi to OpenLCA, so that if other users support data sets or entire models in Gabi, then that we are better able to read this entirely. And that's quite, because then they can say you can submit or use any tool, but we have a very good tool to read all this and then can process data sets for that. And then also because they want to run detailed analysis, they want, and I'm more familiar with Python, so OpenLCA is a very powerful API, but not specifically for Python. So we are creating one Python API so that they can use this for making quality assurance, for example, or analysis of the data sets that they get in the process. Next example is Korea. It's much more moderate, I think. This is N-STAR is a research institution. They use also OpenLCA, so they contacted us. So they run this national Korean CO2 database, and they want to register this in the UN GLAD website and also in the environment footprint network. So this environment footprint network nodes, and this requires a review for compliance and with environment footprint, and we are providing this review currently. Yeah, so it's quite, the other parts are not really present, but this is for them, they use existing other infrastructure, European Commissions, to publish their data sets. There I'm only indirectly involved. European Union, it's somehow surprisingly not such a perfect example. So for the data submission pipeline, they have SODA for LCA, following environment footprint rules, but it's in the end totally decentralized. So there are several nodes, like 15 or so, that where we run also one for the European Paint Association, and there we have the Paint Association has the responsibility to publish data sets, and this is totally independent from the other nodes and not moderated somehow. So it's very interesting. And so if we want to, for OpenLCA, for example, we provide or try to provide one aggregated European footprint database. And for this, we need to really register in 50 nodes, download the data sets. They don't fit together really. And so we need to work on this to make it consistent ourselves, which I think is not a perfect situation. It's a bit also that they don't have really a data set editor. So this they have one, but that's was created in 2003 or so, a Java web start application. Then this you can't really use nowadays. And they have a very simple closed source tool for reference calculation. Look at LCI that you can use when you distribute or create data sets to compare if you get the same results. But this is not really an editor. You can more make calculations. LCA modeling tool, it doesn't exist. So we had this with others, an environment footprint remodeling project with BRIN and ThinkStep then, or Sphera, so Gabi and Simapro. And basically you could say it failed to show that various tools can work together. We were the only ones to implement an agreed format, the other were coming later. And so that really wasn't a success, unfortunately. Yeah, and for publication, they have this SODA for LCA software. And in Germany, it goes a bit downhill. In Germany, it's even worse, I think, because there's only a Probas website that is really outdated. So like from 2017 or so, and then that's also really not containing good data sets. The institutions are aware of this, but somehow it's quite complicated to change that. And so therefore this is not, yeah, it's I would say therefore all these red boxes. We have, of course, with Sphere, for example, national data providers that are quite active and so, but on this public national database level, it's really not presentable, I think, unfortunately. Yes, and don't forget here these other parts where I don't spend much time now, but of course this can be also full, maybe 2 days lecture or so, but I wanted to. Nugroho also presented this UN 2020 report on the roadmap for national databases. This is basically, so this is on here, this roadmap here box. This is the roadmap idea from the UNEP report. It's a bit waterfall-like, so it doesn't, you don't have an iteration or so, but you have a lot of talks before and then you do it and that's it. And this is maybe not realistic. But what I think is really good for a national database is this dark blue area is that you need some time to think about with stakeholders and with local authorities how this should be conceptualized and how the database should be working. And this includes a bit the technology, but also the finances, because it's of course a long-term infrastructure project, and it's a bit as if you say, let's build the bridge, but we only have funding for the first 20 meters, and then we stop maybe. So this is not so perfect, and so therefore it's good to have first this vision really shared, and so that you have a longer term perspective for a database, which includes how to make it really useful for local industry, local scientists, and it involves also local industry and local so to say, so Indonesian scientists in creating it and in maintaining it also. Because it's also a chance to really stand up and to represent Indonesian local situations and ideas in LCA. Yeah, it's a bit, now is the time. I think never before was it that good data on life cycle impacts have been so important, and we see really now it's an exploding interest in industry in Europe, but also elsewhere, because all major companies now try to assess and improve their carbon footprint and also maybe other life cycle impacts. And as I said, I think public LCA data, like public infrastructure, great benefit and advantage for local industry if it's done well. Yeah, so if it really works, not like in Germany, for example. And I think there's now sufficient examples to learn from, also sufficient infrastructure to start from, but you of course need to think of yourself also what fits for you. And it's important to bring main players on board for the start, so that it's not done in isolation somehow, but that really you have a broad support. And as I said already, this is really a chance to reflect Indonesian conditions and background and to support Indonesian research and scientists also. Yeah, thank you very much. And maybe if there are questions, I'm happy to discuss.
Thank you very much, Mr. Andreas. And now we come into the discussion session, and I'll open the floor for questions. We have several questions on the chat box. Probably a question from Mr. Hendro and Mr. Nugroho can be asked directly, but before that, there's a question from Andreas from LTS Consulting. The question is to BRIN and KLHK. In Indonesia, we have middle, small, and micro entrepreneurs activities to produce many environmental impact. Is there any LCA application or method that are ready to be used? It will be good if a small proper can be applied on the middle, small, and micro entrepreneurs. So probably Mr. Sigit, Mr. Nugroho, and Mr. Hendro can comment on that.
Pak Sigit. First, monggo Pak.
Monggo Pak Nugroho.
Pak Sigit. Oh, Pak Sigit masih ini ya. I will try to answer the question, but I think Pak Sigit is preferable to answer this question because he know better about the policy. Regarding the question from the Pak Andreas, medium small enterprise for doing the LCA for the small medium enterprise. I think LCA is a method for that can apply to all of the size of the industry, from the small up to the big industry. The things that we have to consider for the small and medium enterprise, I think we can start with the easy methodology or easy way to have a map of to have scratch of the material supply chains of the small and medium enterprise. For example, from the raw material. For example, perusahaan atau petani, for example, farmer, he can we can help the farmer or with the misalnya perusahaan food and beverage, small and medium enterprise for the food and beverage. We can help them through the government program to teach them step by step in easy way to understand the flow of the materials from the raw material to the product, and they can I think we can help them also to register the documentation of the LCA in the Ministry of Environment, for example, in case their product want to be noted as the product that can be potentially that can be exported. So they have a chance to have the eco label, and the government can help them to register the eco label for the product from the small and medium enterprise. I think that's the things that we can help the pengusaha kecil to have the eco labeling. Maybe Pak Sigit have the better policy for this to answer this question. Pak Sigit mungkin Pak.
Pak Sigit, apakah bisa didengar? Maaf. Mungkin beliau sibuk. Mungkin
saya jawab pakai bahasa Indonesia ya.
Iya.
Untuk perusahaan kecil, misalnya seperti perusahaan makanan, tapi mereka berorientasi ekspor misalnya, mereka mungkin membutuhkan eco label in one day, karena untuk perdagangan global, saya yakin bakal ke depan itu banyak barrier terkait dengan eco labeling. Yang kita bisa lakukan mungkin bantuan dari pemerintah ya, bersama-sama di antara kementerian mungkin membantu mereka untuk mengidentifikasi LCA mulai dari raw material sampai dengan produk jadi mereka, agar itu dan bukan mempermudah ya, tapi memberikan kesempatan mereka untuk juga meregister produk mereka untuk di eco label. Nah mungkin terkait dengan kebijakan itu posisinya ada di KLHK atau di Kemenperin. Monggo Pak Sigit mungkin yang lebih berwenang untuk menjawab.
Mohon maaf, ada Zoom yang lain. Jadi sebetulnya kalau kita rajin cari di jurnal-jurnal, banyak yang sudah menjawab LCA untuk usaha skala kecil. Tapi saya setuju dengan Pak Nugroho, memang peran pemerintah untuk pembinaan itu adalah ada di pemerintah untuk melakukan pembinaan, tidak hanya di sisi manajemen usahanya, tapi juga pengelolaan lingkungan dan juga terkait dengan bagaimana meningkatkan daya saingnya. Nah, barangkali ini yang mungkin akan menjadi salah satu area kita juga untuk bisa dikerjasamakan dengan BRIN untuk bagaimana membuat tipikal misalnya untuk handicraft, misalnya untuk yang produk yang berkaitan dengan produk makanan dan lain sebagainya yang skala kecil bisa dibuat tipikal-tipikalnya. Tapi sebetulnya kalau di jurnal-jurnal dan penelitian-penelitian di beberapa perguruan tinggi sudah tersedia metodologinya, Mas Andreas.
Lanjutin jawaban Pak Sigit ya. The same happens in our institution, Pak Sigit, in BRIN. We also in last year, before we become a BRIN, the chairman of BPPT also asked us to try to identify the LCA for several research product that we have in BPPT. He already mentioned how we do the LCA analysis for the product from the plastic from the polymer, which is the new product that it invented by the researchers in our institution in BPPT, now BRIN. I think we can share this experience in our institution, how to identify and assess the life cycle assessment for the specific product, that invented by the researchers, and we can apply to the pengusaha kecil, small and medium enterprise in the easy way. Thank you very much.
Ada tambahan dari Bu Jessica, mungkin bisa ditanggapi oleh Pak Hendro atau
Ya.
Pak Nugroho.
Pak Sabto, yang dengan KSDI aja, yang rencana rapatnya gimana?
Kendala UMKM katanya adalah pengelolaan data atau pengumpulan data. Apakah mungkin ada bisa pendampingan mungkin dari BRIN? Mungkin ada tanggapan dari Pak Nugroho atau Pak Hendro.
Pengumpulan data ya, collecting the data.
Yeah, I think the barrier for micro and small enterprises, the management and collecting data. So is there any program for doing that in BRIN?
Yeah, I think it's the important role for us in BRIN, researchers in BRIN, together with the government staff in the ministry, like Ministry of Environment and Forestry, to help them to identify the data and how to do the collecting data. I think that's the role of us to help them.
Yeah.
So when BRIN is open to collaboration with the micro entrepreneur, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So for the next question, I think Mr. Hendro can ask directly.
Maybe I can also one
Okay.
input from my side to this interesting question. We are currently finishing a project for the German sawmill industry, which is a bit maybe comparable because this is also small enterprises, so like 20 employees or so. And there they want to or need to, because it's so growing, deliver EPDs, environmental product declarations, in the construction sector, and this is competing with steel and concrete, and so therefore these are larger companies that can afford the normal EPD creation and verification process, and these sawmills can't do this. And therefore, we have created a tool that summarizes or contains a quite complete model of the life cycle assessment of sawmills that is then done compliant with EN 15804, so the European norm for EPDs. And this is currently in verification. And then once this is verified, it's a web tool that we have created that sits on top of this LCA model. And then you, as sawmill owner or operator, you can just enter some details about your specific production process. So if you have the complete, from raw wood to the planks, also the complete steps, or if you buy some from other parties, and if you have an own installation to create energy and whatnot. And then, this creates then an LCA calculation result that is compliant with the EPD and category rules. And that is very easy in the verification, and it takes very short time only. And that's quite a generic approach, I think. So that, because often then you can maybe identify these small, medium companies have products from a certain product group, and then you can make a predefined model that captures these product group, and then only so that these companies then only need to get some products, and then they can make a specific model for them, but in line with the regulations, and it's easier for the verification and for EPDs. So this could be an approach that could work also in Indonesia, maybe.
And Andreas, I remember that you have mentioned us about the easy EPD.
Yeah, that's that. Yes.
The software that you built for the small and medium enterprise, the easy EPD, the software.
Yeah.
Maybe we can use your software in Indonesia for our.
We can discuss. Yes, it's of course really targeted to the situation of the German sawmills, so that you can really adjust everything there, but the principle can really be transferred. And it's maybe also, you have agricultural and forestry companies probably, so this could also work. I don't know, but we could see. We also have now similar project for German metal transforming companies. So Massivumformung, like foundries and they, so that we have are building a similar tool for them now. So that's quite transferable to any sector, I think.
Is there any addition? If not, we continue to Dr. Hendro. Dr. Hendro can ask directly the question to Andreas.
Okay, Mr. Andreas, thank you for excellent presentation and interesting OpenLCA and LCA. I want to interest in your example dynamic standard quality of LCA. You give us example that the quality in 2017 maybe change in 2019. The question is there any feature of OpenLCA that can manage this dynamic changing standard? It said you set the standard related to the year or another metrics?
Very good question. It's not, you can't press buttons now and do this. We have done this with Python scripts in OpenLCA, so you can run in OpenLCA Python scripts and then modify data quality. It's a bit tricky because some things are, so you need to think a bit how you do this, because locations, for example, you cannot say my product is, or you can only for the last process, you can say, I need a data set for Indonesia. I have only one for Malaysia. So this is almost, it's close, but not the same. But then for the supply chain, this is, you can't do this because the supply chain is possible that it's not in Indonesia, but the product comes from Brazil, for example, and so forth. So therefore this is hard to directly assess. So in the end, that we are currently working on the version 2 of OpenLCA, which will bring quite some changes, and this is one of the envisioned changes. So it's not sure how, if this is in version 2.0 or so, but in the end, it would need to make an assessment in each connection of the lifecycle, so that you, in each step of the lifecycle inventory, you are for one allowed to also map things that don't fully fit. Now in the current version, you can only say, okay, I need electricity from China, so I can only supply electricity from China. But then you should be able to say, okay, I can also take in electricity from Germany, but I assess that this is not fitting perfectly. Yeah, so this is a change in the software, and then you could also assess this in the data quality. For now, we have applied this in projects with Python for time, because that's quite easy, and this is valid really for the entire life cycle. So you don't need to think much, and you can just then say, I need now Ecoinvent, for example, or background database from 2021. Ecoinvent has 2010 or so it can become quite bad, and this is easy to assess. Yeah, but it's not in the user interface, but you need to write a script to do this, but it's feasible. Okay. And this will come, and it's a bit, I think in the end, it is not possible in any other LCA software either, but it's really something that is useful, because then it reflects really for you when you do this LCA study, your data quality.
Okay, thank you.
So probably I will ask a similar question to Dr. Hendro. So if we get our assessment that our data is bad, so what should we do? We should get the better data, or is there any mechanism to conquer that obstacle?
Untuk saya, Mbak, ya?
Enggak, I'm asking to Andreas, sorry.
So to me,
yeah, just
okay.
so if after we assess the data and we conclude that the data is not bad, it's not good, sorry. So what should we do after that? Should we just search for better data, or is there any methodology to conquer that obstacle?
I think, yes, very good question, but it's not easy to answer, because there's not really one always fit approach. It's for one, I think the first step is that you are aware when you get the LCA calculation results that you don't have good data quality in some points. And there, I think we put quite some effort in OpenLCA that you really see this. I mean, not what we had in the previous question. So it's as the data quality is in the database, but still this is already quite advanced. And then when you see, okay, it's quite old, then you as a practitioner or as an expert, you need to then think, okay, can I accept this or not? Because then you can, of course, then say, okay, especially when you see, okay, this is the most contributing data set, and then it has a bad data quality, then you need to think more than if it's somehow not so important and not so contributing much and has a not good data quality. If it is highly contributing, then you need to think a bit if this is probably changing a lot or not. It's a bit, these count data quality indicators are quite simple. So you assess always in these pedigree scores 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and for time, for example, it's always the same. But it's quite clear that IT, for example, that you had then last week maybe as a workshop topic, is changing very fast. In Ecoinvent, for example, is really bad in IT, so they have computer hardware from 2010 or so, and this is, you can't buy this anymore. But I don't know in Indonesia, but here ship transport that is not on the ocean, but here on the rivers, it's really not innovative. So I have the same ships for 30 years or so, and there, if you have a ship that is 5 years old, that's quite fine. Yeah. So therefore, it depends a lot on the specific case. If time data quality that is bad is really affecting your results a lot, and or not. Yeah. So you need to think about this. If you have the feeling it does affect it, then it's tricky, because then of course you can try to invest time and find something better, or you can also say I rather leave this out because it's totally misleading. This could also be, for example, in again IT hardware, if you have, for example, lead soldering that you don't do anymore now, yeah, but in an older data set you have lead in the soldering process because it was quite common, and so this can make a lot of impacts for human toxicity, for example. And so if you see this, then it's better to not have the data set than to include it. Or maybe modify the data set yourself by applying own research results that you say, okay, this lead is not present anymore, so we can delete this flow in the data set or so. So a lot of different actions that you could take, so to say.
Thank you very much. So so for the next question is from Nugroho. You can ask directly to Andreas.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Moderator. My question is, could you please share the experience in the LCA Lifecycle Inventory Data Collaboration Server, for example, from the various countries in the world? For example, regarding the electricity process or project in the flow in the EcoInvent. You know that the Indonesia electricity information in the EcoInvent 3.7 is from the National Electricity Grid in 2013, which is 8 years ago, not the recent one. Is too obsolete, and we need to up to date this information about the electricity emission factor in the EcoInvent 3.7. I try to contact the ETH Zurich because I know some of them are the collaboration people, expert to what is it, to manage this EcoInvent.
Yeah, for energy. Yeah.
Could you please inform us how to help or to contribute to the EcoInvent 3.7? Just the small easy example in the electricity, because it's in the EcoInvent 3.7 is from 8 years ago of Indonesian electricity grid, which is it's very too obsolete. Thank you very much.
Yes, but so it doesn't. So you have two parts of the question, right? So the collaboration server is not part of the electricity question, right?
Yeah, but it's just the combination of two questions.
Yes, yes. So maybe collaboration server first. This is used by HCA Commons Gov. So that's quite really broadly used. And then we have some other users. For example, DECHEMA, so German Association of Chemists, they have an international, or the German and international working group, and they use this. And otherwise, it's just a free software that we put for download. So therefore, we don't know all the users. We are now working on a quite newer version that is much, because the old version works, but it has a bit an issue when you synchronize a lot of data sets at once, and this is now worked on and will be quite nice. We use Git technology for that, and it's hopefully finished beginning of next year. But yeah, for the other question about the electricity, this is just Econman is really slow. Yeah, so they have also, I didn't put them as national database, but their IT infrastructure is also from 20 years ago or so, and this really takes time. And you see,
yes, exactly.
You see also that Rolf and Niels, for example, they have these LC Inventories database on the site, because they said we can't wait for Econman to release it, so we do this ourselves, for example. Yeah, so this is really, yeah, it's a bit an issue, I think, and I was in India and in conferences 2 years ago, and they said, yes, we worked 3 months full time, and then we managed to just enter 35 cotton data sets into Econman. Yeah, so with the editor, and it's not the situation, I think. Yeah, so I think it's a bit a pity, but that's, I mean, I think they try to do their best, but they depend a lot on IT, and that's, they don't change that. Yeah, so it's a bit, it's just taking so long time.
Yeah, thank you, Andreas. Actually, you know, Andreas, EcoInvent 3.6, 3.7 is common to be used in Indonesia for the practitioner of the LCA and do the activity of the LCA in Indonesia. But unfortunately, some of the data that available in the database are very obsolete, especially related with the Indonesian database. I mentioned before about the electricity is from 2013, which is 8 years ago, and it cannot be used for the benchmark of to do the LCA activities in Indonesia. I will try again to contact the ETH Zurich and the EcoInvent. Actually, I already submit the updated the electricity, but I don't know why they not what is it modify update the EcoInvent until now. Thank you.
Yeah, they're very nice, but they're also very, I think, always Swiss bookkeeping, so they're very formal. So they can't say, okay, just let's do it, but it's very, okay, we have these 10 steps and we follow these, and this just takes time. And I think there's also really a motivation to maybe start your own database. You know?
Really, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so next question is from Jessica Hana, Lifecycle Indonesia, and it's addressed to Andreas. Do you have any recommendation for the inventory methodology? Also, the data quality indicators, which one that you recommend? And also, what is the reason for the unclear German national database?
Ooh. So the first, maybe last, maybe first, Germany, I don't know why they are so struggling with setting up this database. I mean, the PROBAS, it's called PROBAS database, exists since maybe 20 years or longer, maybe 30 or 25. But it's a bit, I think, German perception was always that Germany is anyhow leading in this environmental assessment field, and so they don't need to invest a lot or so. Yeah, and I can't tell, because it's public funding and public also situations. And it was a bit in one government, it was switching to another. The environmental ministry was switching to the construction ministry. It was combined, and that led to some confusion. And so, but I can't tell. I can tell that though there is for EPDs a database that's quite living. So Ökobaudat, that's quite broadly used, and that's also regularly updated. And so that's a bit better. They don't have an editor also, but this is really maintained and updated, and they include new EPDs that are released and new background data sets and so on. But that's only for EPDs, and it's really fully aggregated impact assessment added data sets, and not really, you can't use this in a normal SA model. For the methodology, this is of course tough, and I think my personal really recommendation would be, or I can tell that in the European Commission, they try to specify a methodology, and it takes a lot of time to really come to one agreed methodology, and sometimes this also leads to a lot of frustration among the actors. So I just maybe I told already to Nugroho, but the coffee example, so they try to make category rules that you say that for this product group you need to model it this way. And for coffee, for example, the statement was you can just say 1 cup of coffee, and then which is the mix, and then the espresso versus cafe latte. I'm not sure how familiar you are, but cafe latte is very large coffee, which contains almost a quarter liter of milk, and that of course has much higher impacts than normal espresso that is just small coffee. And so that the industry said, no, we don't do this because it's misleading. And so this is a lot of discussions and really tedious process, because sometimes also you can't, what is the functional unit? What is your goal and scope? Really, some questions are not really that you say this correct or incorrect, but that's more an agreement. And to come to this, it's really tough typically. And so my recommendation would be to have some basic agreements, but then to have some freedom to do things this or this way, or to also recognize what others do, like USA and Europe, of course, because they're quite large players, and to see a bit that data set can be aligned with both systems. And this was a bit also the idea from the UN GLAD data quality, where we had developed, I don't know the exact number, but like 35 different data quality indicators that basically serve to describe how you model the data set also. So it's not only time and so on, but also how did you deal with water? How did you deal with biogenic carbon? And so that ideally you can understand from a data set if it fits to your methodology that you need or not. And also ideally that a data set is, when you create it, made so that you can use it in different frameworks, so that you follow, for example, that the data set can be converted, so to say that it fits to the European Commission modeling framework, but also to the US EPA framework maybe, because it's just so that you can't ignore that there are different communities that have different conventions. And if you try hard to make an own one, that's always a bit tricky, I think.
Any comment from Mrs. Jessica?
So
Yes.
that for lesson learned from Germany, then it is more of a governance, Andreas,
I would say yes, yeah.
Okay.
And it's maybe also because maybe some players are not so interested that we make a lot of development and progress there, because it's of course you have then some players that develop database in meetings and they say, well, it exists already, so we don't need to spend money there. And so
not that. So for the methodology, if I can conclude from your answers, so we might better to see GLAD, follow GLAD, maybe,
I think I would recommend, yeah. Of course, it can be that it fits, so it can be a bit too complicated maybe, but in principle, GLAD, yes, I would say, yeah.
All right, thank you so much for your answers, Andreas.
Yeah, thank you.
Very interesting.
Okay, next question is from Ms. Ira BRIN. I think this is related to the previous question about the data. How to make sure the collected data is sufficient and good quality data? Is it from company or industry which got the green or blue certificate? And how about the data from other company without certificate but already follow the rule? Okay, to Andreas.
I think it is it is good to really check data when you receive this. So sometimes it's just collected, and in the end, then a reviewer needs to say this is good or not good. But it's quite it helps a lot if you check initial just units that are provided with the data set, and if you see the unit process data sets that are contributing to one system. Yeah, because sometimes in European Commission they initially focus on system processes, and I was also one reviewer, and I was asked to verify or review if aggregated system process is done correctly, and of course you can't say much. Yeah, you can only say if the flows are part of their reference flow system, but the amounts you can't really control also. So therefore, this is very, I think, important to be able to see the unit process data sets that are initially collected and have the chance to check this and maybe to correct this also, because it's quite common that you just have unit or amount and unit mistakes, so that you have 1,000 cubic meters because it was meant to be have 1,000 liter and 1 cubic meter or so. And this kind of course, when this is already merged into a larger system, then you maybe don't see this so easily. So therefore, I think this is quite important. So these more maybe sophisticated data quality of GLAD, this is next step. But when you just check the data sets, it's more that maybe what is quite important that you have an agreed list of units, for example, that you have an agreed list of flow nomenclature, because then you can easily understand this is really carbon dioxide and not everybody calls it differently or so. And to check this and some of the share and the amounts in the amounts of flows in data sets, and that then is quite sufficient, I think. And for that, it's quite useful. This is what we have done for USDA, to have a pipeline of a submission that is a bit what we have done, a bit like when you submit a scientific article, so that you say there's a reviewer for the data set that is submitted, and then the reviewer has comments, and then you can maybe then correct this afterwards.
So is there any correlation between the quality of data with the green or blue certificates that the industry have? Probably Nugroho or Andreas can answer.
Maybe Nugroho, you take this.
Oh, wow. If related with the proper blue, green, gold, I think it's passing. It's more.
Thank you for the question. I think there is no direct relation between the green and gold rating with the quality of data, because we insert the LCE criteria and proper another component such as the quality of the reviewer, how they develop, how they integrated the LCE with the environmental management system within the company. So we working with the Bu Jessica and friends to develop different mechanism to filter the quality of data. But I think it's good indication if they got gold or green rating in proper. Maybe 60% it's follow the procedure or methodology that agreed by the company, and also the Lifecycle Association. Maybe Bu Jessica can help. And
maybe just one comment, but yes, Jessica can also, of course, then add. From my experience, it's I'm not so familiar with the certification colors, so but from my experience, it's often if a company has already done, or it's the person in the company has already done such a collection and understands LCA, that's very useful, because now it's many new companies come in, and if companies have not done this before, then they don't really understand what they are supposed to do, and either do a lot of things, but then forget essential things for the LCA or so, or just have, that takes a lot of time to explain and make people aware of what they are supposed to add in a data set, for example, and that's quite a change. So if a company is experienced and the person also in the company or not, I think.
Okay, thank you. Before we close the session, I want to ask one final question to all the speakers. We all agree that the establishing an Indonesian national database is very important. So what's the most important step that we have to take? So probably we start with Pak Sigit. Silahkan, Pak.
I think collaboration between all stakeholders, not only Ministry of Environment and Forestry, not only BRIN, but also Association of Industry, industry itself, and also researchers from various universities, very important. And we have to develop roadmap. Within the roadmap, what is the contribution of each party must be clearly stated in this roadmap. So right now we waiting for BRIN to make a first step, but BRIN also waiting for us to make the first step. So we don't know what is the map, the road that we have to follow. So we have to make collaboration, and as soon as possible we meet to make a roadmap.
Okay, probably Nugroho can
Thank you, Pak Sigit. I agree 1000% with Pak Sigit regarding the collaboration is very important for us in our country to establish our own national database, because we cannot always follow overseas database that cannot be represent the real condition or real situation of the Indonesian product and industry. As I wrote on the chat box, that is easy example about the electricity in the worldwide database. It's not represent the current condition of Indonesia electricity national grid anymore. So we have to use our own or modify the data set based on our real situation in Indonesia, because it's very important. For example, for the carbon tax, easy example, perhaps LCA can be used to analyze what's the range of the ratio, what is it, the best scenario for the carbon tax in Indonesia. Maybe lifecycle assessment can be used as the tools to identify this, as also for the green economic development. I think it's time to start in 2022. All of us, Pak Sigit especially, can be the coordinator of our collaboration. Mbak Jessica, Pak Hendro, Pak Kiman Siregar. Also, of course, our friends from Germany, Andreas Ciroth, can assist us to have a best quality of our national database of the LCA. Thank you.
Hendro, silahkan.
Oh, Pak.
I agree and no comment anymore. We will start open collaboration and bring APS, our infrastructure researcher like Mr. Nugroho, our researcher, Mr. Eddie can contribute more in this collaboration. And of course, Pusdatin, my team is will contribute more. Thank you.
Last but not least, Andreas, do you have any suggestion for Indonesia on what the most important step to take?
Yes, thanks a lot. So I think this the agreement on the roadmap is really key. What Sigit also said in Nugroho, and I think also maybe as addition, I think it would make sense to have some smaller examples that make sense already now, because this can be a longer process, and so until you really start. And with the electricity, for example, this is something where you can say, okay, this makes sense already, and we have something, and then it's more easy to build from practical cases that really make sense, then yeah, because UNEP, for example, typically is more in the air, and then you make large concepts and slideshows and so, but don't have something that really people can really use. And if you say we have something that's much better than what is now in EcoInvent, that's really very nice, and we can expand on this in other maybe cases also. That's very convincing, I would say. Yeah, and then it also, I think for us here at GreenDelta also, agile development is very important, and that means that you make some first examples and you see, okay, that's nice, but then we maybe need to revise this a bit and extend it here also, or that didn't work totally, and then you learn from that, and it's better than make one huge meeting series and then after 2 years start to implement this somehow, because then you realize, okay, we forgot something or whatever. So that's really, both things I need. I think for one, a really effort to come to an agreement towards a roadmap and to get support from important institutions also for that, and important people. We, of course, if it makes sense, are happy to support this also. But also to make practical advances that you can say, okay, here we've already proven that we can, for example, do this, that is much better than what exists, and that's quite convincing, maybe in Indonesia, but also internationally, because maybe also then EcoInvent starts to see why they are so slow, and that they maybe need to, whatever, collaborate or come to an agreement or integrate these data also. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to all experts for the outstanding presentation, and I believe that have enriched our insights and knowledge regarding the Lifecycle Inventory database. And I also believe that we are one step closer in establishing Indonesia's national LCI database. And I would also like to thank all the participants for the active participations. I hope that we can meet again in another workshop. Thank you. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andreas.
Have a good day. Yeah, bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Andreas, wah,
Ya,
saya lupa
Terima kasih, Pak
ngomong,
Sigit.
Pak Edi Wiloso ada di sini.
Oh, it's okay. Thank you.
Terima
Enjoy
kasih,
the
Pak Sigit.
discussion.
Terima kasih, Pak Hendro.
Terima kasih,
Andreas, when you will come to Indonesia, Andreas?
Andreas.
Yeah, let's see. Let's talk about this. Indeed.
Yeah, I will send you email.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Bye-bye. Ciao. Ciao.
Good day.